I'm Twana Mons. I'm the Director of Student Support Services. So all these wonderful staff members that are here, that is part of our team, the counselors, learning specialists, testing coordinators, athletic coordinator, what else do I have? Learning specialists, counselors, advisory. Yay. So that's part of our department. We're part of advisory. We had met these wonderful people, I want to say about 4 or 5 years ago in a training right before the fantastic COVID lockdown. And I was learning so much about social emotional learning. My background is a licensed mental health counselor. And I was like, this is kind of cool. And they incorporated this not just in their advisory program, but for a whole school perspective. So you're not just doing this piece here, but it's infused throughout the day. And so we got a chance to meet these wonderful people, and they came into our school. We started in the middle school, and our advisors got trained, learned how to incorporate this. Our lead advisor incorporated it in the curriculum, and even our teachers who may not be advisors incorporated in our other curriculum in English and math and science. It's just infused in everyday life in the middle school. So we're like, well, we're one school. Let's trickle all up to the upper school. And we started this program last year in advisory, and it's infused throughout the curriculum and the advisory program. So our kids are our foundation. Now we have the advisory piece, the teacher piece, and now we're like, well, come on, parentals, let's get the parents going. We've gotten so many questions about what we're doing and how to support our kids, and just from the parent perspective. Our wonderful facilitators, we have Rush here, we have Shamika here, and they're going to come and give you all some great foundational, wonderful works to explain like what we do, what their institution is, what their foundation is, and how to be incorporated here to support our wonderful children. So, without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Rush and Shamika. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Twana. Big shout out to Twana and Kelly and Katie and the whole team here. It's really just such a pleasure to work with them, as you probably know if you've been in touch with them. My name is Rush Savaston Frank, and I'll be one of your guides for today, along with my friend Samika. And since we'll be talking a little bit to you, just want to let you know a little bit about us as human beings. I am one of the directors and co-founders of the Institute for Social and Emotional Learning. It's a lot of words to say. We just call ourselves IFSEL for short. I have been a counselor. I'm a trained counselor, but I've also been in the classroom teaching social and emotional learning to middle schoolers for much of my time. I worked at a gifted school in California called the Nueva School and taught SEL class there. So that was a cool thing for me. I'm a native North Carolinian. Grew up here, Tar Heel. Woohoo! Still have that right. Probably shouldn't have admitted it so close in case we have some other fans now. But native to the area, but spent a long time in California and Atlanta, and now back here with my family, and excited to be here. Let's see what else I want to tell you. A little bit about me. I have 2 sons, and really just to say, I'm up here talking to you about this work, and I'm doing this work every day at home with my kids and my partner. Those are my boys. One is 16 and one is 13. A little place I go in the summer in Vermont. I know all the lyrics to Run DMC, so in case you had judged me, you might not have guessed. I don't know. And that's my little girl. I only have one girl. She's Brooklyn. That is her. And just so happy that you're here. I feel Samika and I were saying our list to do are just way too long these days. You showed up here, we really appreciate it.
And I'm Samika Smith-Williams. I'm upper school dean of students at the Calhoun School in New York City. And so I flew down here on Monday and have the pleasure of working with Rush and being here at Cary. I am the mom of 2 college-age daughters. And so one is a senior, the other is a freshman. And I will admit, the journey for both of them has some overlaps, but also had moments where my parenting and what was required of me and my husband was very different. Particularly because one kind of was graduating right a year after kind of lockdown, The other had it where her 8th grade year was interrupted by lockdown. And I share this not as a way of kind of sharing trauma, but really as just a way of indicating that the impact of the last couple of years has really shifted what it has required of us as parents, and what our kids are experiencing, where they find joy, and where they find connection. And so I'm pleased to say that both are in a good place now, and we are kind of feeling like things are steady. But it's been a challenging moment, and I also see that in my classroom, in my advisory, and working with families in my role at the Calhoun School. I'm also trained as a lower school educator, and so thinking about the questions that children bring into a space, thinking about how they talk about their emotions is an automatic part of my experience, my training, and I find joy in bringing that to high school students and really thinking about what it means for them to step into their power and kind of lean into that. High schoolers are not that different from lower schoolers. They like to seek power, right? They're like tantruming, but in a different way. But there's also a lot of curiosity and joy as they move through the world, and so that's been fun. I am a native New Yorker, so pardon my fast talking. It's just a part of what I do. I'll try to slow down a little bit if you feel like I'm going too fast. And I just appreciate art. My daughter is studying art. The other is becoming an early childhood educator. So definitely done my part.
All right, thanks, Mika. So just a little bit about us, just to give you a little background. We've been around since 2009. All the founders were teachers in the classroom trying out this work, working with students. And right now we are based all over the world. We have a colleague who just came back from Germany and have our first school in India. So just to echo that, schools all over the place are really looking to fine-tune this work with children. And our mission is that we envision a world where empathy abounds and all people thrive. This is just a snapshot of some of the schools that we work with, and I want to show this to show you and echo that all schools are looking at how to incorporate more social emotional learning. There is no right way to do it, and it is not for one day. So as Mika said, it is almost, I feel it's even more important for the older students. You think of social emotional learning in the younger students because it is kind of in their day-to-day routine. Who am I? How do I be social? How do I share? And you know, because you're here, when you get to the middle and upper grades, stakes are higher, right? Things become more meaningful and important to you. I also want to say on this slide what a joy it is to be a part of Carey Academy, and that I hope you feel that, because I've been to a lot of these schools. Samika's been in a lot of schools, and they really care about what they're doing here. And they are really trying to find the right work and infuse it in all the areas. So the students aren't seeing that we talk about emotions in this area. They're learning that you have to figure out how to handle your emotions, self-regulate, figure out who you are all the time, all day long, right? And we know this as adults. So it's been a real pleasure to be at Carey Academy and doing this work, and we've been doing it since 2020. As Twana said, teachers came to some of our workshops, and then over the last 4 years, IFSEL has been coming here and really learning alongside of your educators here, learning a lot from them, and also teaching them some ways to really connect students to each other in the classroom. And that's what they're really needing right now. You know, teenagers want that anyway. They want relevant curriculum that brings in their real lives, and that's what's happening, in my opinion, or what I know of at Carey Academy, so that's important. But also the teachers are learning that about each other and how to bring it in themselves to their classrooms. So would someone mind reading this quote out? We're going to get you involved today. Thanks.
If we want to support the social and emotional health of our students, we have to start with
So that includes you, and that's why you're here, and we are certainly glad you're here. You're a huge part of this. So we're starting with ourselves. So today we'll talk about how to do this work with your children, but I'd like you to also just think about how to do it with yourselves and your loved ones and other family members.
So I did say I was from New York. On my way down here, because of protests and everything else happening in the city, like streets were closed, and for us as a school, we made it so that there weren't any trips taken on Monday in fear of what might be happening inside the city. You all are down here in North Carolina, where I was watching the news for the last 24 hours, and there's storms coming this way. I'm like, my dad's name was Milton, and I'm like, okay, Milton, hold on, storms are coming this way, and having walked through the lobby of the upper school, right, we see the mountains of donations that are pouring in an effort to help other North Carolinians as they try to rebuild and just kind of repair kind of the damage that's been done. And full transparency, even my head of school is from North Carolina, and so she was down here last week in an effort to support her family and brought her mom back up to New York. There's a lot going on in our world, and with that, there are ways in which our kids are leaning on one another, but we're also, as adults, as Rush has highlighted, needing to also think about how we lean on one another. And so I really love this poem by Margaret Wheatley, and I'm going to ask if someone can read it aloud, because hearing it, seeing it is one thing, but to hear it spoken into a space also just allows us to lean in a slightly different way. So can I have one volunteer? Thank you.
There's no power greater than a community discovering what it cares about. Ask, what's possible, not what's wrong. Keep asking. Notice what you care about. Assume that many others share your dreams. Be brave enough to start a conversation that matters. Talk to people you know. Talk to people you don't know. Talk to people you never talk to. Be intrigued by the differences you hear. Expect to be surprised. Treasure curiosity more than certainty. Invite in everybody who cares to work on what's possible. Acknowledge that everyone is an expert about something. Know that creative solutions come from connections. Remember, you don't fear people whose story you know. Real listening always brings people closer together. Trust that meaningful conversations can change your world. Rely on human goodness. Stay together.
We're going to bring her with us. What are some words or phrases that stand out in this poem? Connections.
Real listening,
Thank you.
Curiosity.
Bravery. Right? These are all things that in many ways we're not holding on to in the same way, we're not intentional about in the same way, and we need to be. Right? And your showing up here this morning is one step in all of the steps that we take towards trying to foster community and care for our kids, but also to other members of the Cary community. And so we want to just hold on to that as we proceed through this morning. And the words that were spoken by your fellow parents, let's hold on to those as we continue through this process. We like to think of connection as content and not something that's separate. You heard Rush say before that in a lower school classroom, oftentimes they have morning meetings and they have, read alouds and other programs that your kids experience before stepping into middle school, before going into high school. And in those two divisions, we don't always have community time built in the same way. And so how do we foster connection? We're going to do an activity now. If you're able to, I'm going to ask you to stand up or you can wave. if the things that I say are applicable to you. And so we call this stand up, well, like I said, or wave if. So I'm going to read a couple of things out loud. Let's see. Wave or stand if your family is new to Carey Academy this school year. Thank you. Okay. Stand up or wave if you danced in the past week. All right. We gotta have a dance party. Stand up or wave if you enjoy chores. Okay, lean into that. Thank you. Stand up and wave, or actually I should have said keep standing if you enjoy ironing. If ironing is your favorite. Stand up or wave if you like to wear hats. See, there are other hat lovers in this group. Stand up or wave if you speak another language. No, you're like, yes. Thank you. Stand up or wave if you've had an unresolved conflict in your life recently. Thank you. Stand up or wave if you've played Fortnite. Thank you. Stand up or wave if your favorite season is the fall. Stand up or wave if you've had a nickname growing up. Keep standing if you still use that nickname now. Keep standing if you like the nickname. Thank you. Let's see, last one. Stand up if you've learned something about another member of this community this morning. Thank you. And so, again, we like to think that connection is content. We can stand here and share a lot with you, but learning from one another and just kind of getting a sense of what your stories are is also a part of the learning that needs to happen in terms of fostering the kind of connection and community we want to here at Carey. Our goals for this morning, again, are to connect and acknowledge our shared humanity. This is a hard time to be a parent. You've heard Rush and I kind of talk about that. Many of us are also experiencing that sandwich generation, right? Kind of taking care of our kids, but also having to care for our own parents or loved ones, older loved ones. We're hoping that you learn and share, we hope to learn and share with you all and practice strategies that will allow us to think about how to support our kids right now in this moment. And hopefully some tips on emotional coaching. So we're going to kind of walk through those things. We've read through your questions and hope to get to some of them, but also recognize that this is one session that's a part of a longer series with online activities as well as in person.
Yeah, so just acknowledging our shared humanity in this role as a parent. What a wonderful role we have, and just to be being so grateful for that, and acknowledging that it's not always easy, right? And a lot of what we'll say today might be some tips and strategies or reminders and validations of what you already do, and the most important thing we can do is actually to model it, right? It's one thing to know, but the hard work is actually doing it and trying to remember what we're trying to really teach our kids by doing, walking the walk. We know there's this new kind of mantra out there, I think it was Lisa DeMoore who shared it, that mattering matters. Your kids need to know they matter in whatever way. And actually they're relating that a lot to purpose and chores. So it might help you rethink the way you ask your kids to do chores. It helps them have a purpose. And they definitely need to know that they matter. They matter to the friend group, they matter to you, they matter to your home unit. Also this idea of we live in this world that it really demands and models perfection. We do not want to keep going there. We really want to celebrate mistakes, talk about them when you make them, show them, laugh about them. Kids really want to see the mistakes you make, right? I know that a lot of them think of you as, really lame because they're teenagers, but they also really look up to you. And they probably see you as, heroes in some ways. So it's really good to share, oh gosh, I'm really nervous about this presentation, and, I really messed up something, and talk and model how you dealt with that. And really, just lastly, that being here is just being present, being here for them, being there for them is such a great gift. So when you feel like, I don't know what I'm doing, just be there and listen. Sometimes that's all they want or all they need. And I don't know if we told you this is a sleepover. There's no way we can get through this parenting stuff in 1.5 hours, I think it is. So, no kidding, I'm kidding, we're not sitting together. But this is a journey. There's so much we could share on parenting. So if you would get your phones out now, I will ask you to put them away afterwards. But if you just make sure this link is working for you, it will take you to an online packet of resources that you can use after the talk. You can print it out, share it with people who couldn't come today. Would someone mind just pushing the link to make sure that it opens and you actually have the packet? Great, there you go. We can show this at the end too, but that's why we don't have any materials for you. So much more that we can share is in this packet. And then also, this is a note that you can go to our website and we have a lot of things linked there, articles, podcasts, things like that. Are we good on that? Great. I guess it's a good time to say that this is one of a series. It's being recorded for parents who can't be here, but we have part 2 coming up in October 24th. I'm pretty sure, and that one is online. The only option is online, so we'll get you that information. And then the third one is in the spring, and it will be in person too. So anyone who missed that, please encourage them to attend the online and then the in spring. I want to just review a little bit about social emotional learning, what it is, just a reminder of the competencies. Some of you may know a lot about SEL, but it looks different through different eyes. So let us just share with you a little bit. And again, can I have another voice to read this definition out? Sure.
A lifelong dynamic process through which people acquire and apply knowledge, skills, and mindsets to understand and manage emotions, develop healthy identities, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, achieve personal goals and collective goals, make responsible and caring decisions. All learning is social and emotional.
Great. So we like this definition because it really talks about the dynamic process of the intrapersonal and the interpersonal. It's really happening all day long. It's happening right now. We're having to self-regulate right now as we listen and think about our to-do list. And if you look at this chunk in the middle, that's a lot of things, right? That is some serious work in the middle. And it's a lifelong task. We never graduate from social emotional. So it's really wonderful that now more schools and companies, organizations are paying attention to it because all humans are really trying to work on our skills. And we know that learning is not separate from emotional, right? The academic involves our emotions. A long time ago, they used to think there was a divide. Now we know that all learning is social and emotional. And just like math or science, SEL has competencies that it's based in. And so I'll just spend a minute showing you this in case you're not familiar with this. This is something that students in 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade are able to kind of think about and evaluate their own competencies and take a look at them. So the first two, the self-awareness and the self-management, are the intrapersonal skills. And that's where we really start with. How do I understand myself? How do I manage my feelings? How do I gain a sense of confidence to be with others? And the next two in the green are the interpersonal. How do I work with other people, especially if they don't have the same values? How do I work on a team? with other students, right? So how do I be in relationship with people? How do I get along with my teacher who I think doesn't like me? All those skills, the interpersonal. And then we like to think of them all culminating into a human being who can go out into the world and make great decisions for themselves and the world, for others. Does that make sense? So you can see how this is our work, right? And it takes time, and it's like building a muscle. So we'll refer to these today, this morning, and ask you to think about them. Now you might say, well, what does that have to do with what our students are learning? This is what IFSEL uses as like the curriculum, so to speak. This is what we're teaching students, and when you think of it, it's actually skills that they're learning, things to work on and to practice. And the way we like to use this chart is the left side is really the foundational tools when they're younger. Those things don't go away. These might look more familiar to you because as we grow and become more developed and sophisticated, we're then working on these tools. So for example, when they're little or younger, we talk about cooling off. We're going to talk about that this morning. But as adults, we really talk about managing our stress, right? Same thing with maybe like a boundary bubble is a lesson we use with younger students. That moves into boundaries and consent and respecting our space as adults. Make sense? Okay. So this is really an important slide tool to think about. Oh, okay, this is what we need when we in advisory when students are working on games together, or when they're doing adventures, or when they have a reflection after a trip, or when they're preparing for a lockdown. They're working on these skills. Now, why is this important? Well, I don't know if you've heard this, but they're now saying that students at high-achieving schools are an at-risk group, right? Because we live in a culture that test prep is way up there, stress, right? This kind of stress culture. And we see it everywhere. But what we need to combat that stress kind of paradigm is we need social emotional learning. Skills to help kids self-regulate, be aware of how stressed they are or how calm they are and what they need. Note if they have connections and note if they have healthy relationships. So I wanted to point to something that's usually of interest to parents, college applications. Anybody dealing with that right now? Okay, good, just a few of us. So we're seeing SEL pop up all over the world. And here you can see those inter and intrapersonal skills on the applications. So asking here to the student, what matters most to you and why? Talk about a time inside or outside the classroom when you worked with others and you learned from that experience. How have you collaborated with others? What lessons have you learned? Students who have had SEL in their history, this is a piece of cake. They know it. They've been practicing it. They've been asked this. They talk about it in their conferences. So this is why it's so important. We're building little humans that are able to know themselves, understand themselves, and understand how they can be with others. Does that make sense? Good. You might be quiet.
No, I was just going to say, because one of the things that I've noticed is that, oftentimes we think of social emotional skills as something that maybe doesn't feel as relevant, doesn't feel as important. And we'll hear from a student in terms of her own reflection, but I also just want to make sure that we recognize like where our biases might exist when it comes to that. Why do we think that it doesn't matter as much, or feel like I don't have time for that? Sometimes it's not a reflection of what we truly believe as it relates to kind of thinking about connection and thinking about our social emotional well-being, but sometimes it's our own capacity to engage our young people with that. And so just being aware of that is important.
Yeah, this is Audrey. So she was a student that learned social emotional learning in her career, kind of lower school, middle school. And this is her in high school just reflecting on it. She was on campus one day and we said, oh, Audrey, we have a video of you when you're small. Can you sit down and let us ask you a few questions? So this is a snippet of what she's going to say.
I think a lot about these SEL tools, they were ways to introduce us to strategies for how to interact with our peers and how to build the kind of environment and community we wanted. And so in my everyday life now, there aren't that many instances where I'll pull out a tool as an isolated instance where I'll go and I'll use the specific iMessage, but I use an assertive voice often. I take moments to calm down, to do meditative practices or to reflect often. And I think that starting with those specific tools that we could understand at a young age was a great way to help us kind of integrate them into our daily practices.
See how she wraps it up so nicely for you. I remember when our students from middle school went to high school at the school where I was teaching, and they would come back and visit, and we would say, "How's it going?" And they said, "Well, academically, we're right up there with our peers, but SEL-wise, we are so advanced. We're like the peer mediators, and we're trying to help our, friends do things," because they just felt like, okay, we got this. This is something we really feel advanced with, because they had some experiences with that, and that's why I'm so happy for your children as well. They're having experiences with that here at CARE.
Thank you for sharing that, Rush. And so as we kind of move into this next part of our program, I want you to think about this question. Right, so what words come to mind when you think of parenting? Can we just have a couple of words popcorned out? What comes to mind when you think of parenting? Responsibility. Crazy. Patience. Learning. Supportive. Hot mess.
Model.
Say it again.
Model.
Model.
Joy.
Joy. Right? Say it again. Priceless. We wouldn't change it for anything. We wouldn't trade it in. And yet it still drives us a little crazy sometimes. And so parenting, right, when we were younger, or when our kids were younger, you were younger too, right, many of you probably picked up that book, What to Expect When Expecting. There's really no guide as they get older. But we were trying to think through, well, what to expect when you have a teenager, right? There's actually real value. I think sometimes we get worried when we see our kids wanting some alone time, right? But there's some value to alone time. Need peer time. They need to have those connections. It's part of the reason why trying to foster that in the last couple of years has been a real mission of so many schools. And what does that look like beyond school and into the summer, right? Over breaks and beyond those kind of like set times in the classroom. Overreactive. You can expect that they're going to be a little overreactive, right? Because they're trying to figure out their own emotional kind of response, their own management of themselves. Humor can help. How many of you have laughed with your kids in the last month, right? It helps us, and it helps them. Need for sleep. Sometimes they're working on assignments, right? Or just kind of like chatting with friends or playing games. And sleep doesn't feel as much of a priority in the same way. And yet we know they benefit from having additional sleep time. And we get worried sometimes when you're like sleeping till 3 o'clock on the weekend, right? We're like, wait, hold up. So finding that balance. They don't want us to worry or involve us. Right? How many of you have seen your kid kind of struggling with something and you're trying to kind of ask questions and they're like, nope, got it, right? And so it's important that they do speak with us, or they're speaking with someone, and that someone is maybe communicating with us, but they don't want to worry us oftentimes. And they feel like, oh, this is a small thing. You're thinking about larger kind of, you're thinking about grandma. I don't want you to worry about this as well, right? So like those are real. Those feelings are real. Listening and presence is something that they definitely need, and it's something that Rush has mentioned before, and just something that you all have also named as we move through so far. And hugs may help. They don't always help, but sometimes it does. It goes a long way. My AT role sometimes just say, can I just have a hug? And I'm like, sure, that's easy. I can do that, right? If that's gonna make you feel better, let's go. And so, again, just being mindful of that is so, so important. And recognizing that in any particular moment, there might be a combination of things that are needed, or it might be just one singular piece that we need to focus on. But this list is hopefully something that we can rely on and maybe guide us a little bit. Because sometimes we're like, what do I do right now? So just trying to be mindful of that. As we're thinking about our top 5 kind of tools to use, right, so checking in, we've done a little bit of check-ins already, but we'll continue to do that and be more intentional. We also put some materials out there that we think help with check-ins. Listening for connection, right? Sometimes we're listening to try to see what the problem is and how to solve it. And sometimes we just need to pause and recognize that they just want to be heard, right? And that might be true for our friends as much as it is for our kids. Cooling off, recognizing when we need to just kind of, we need to diffuse the situation. I told a parent, parents, their daughter is an incredible soccer player, and she's an 11th grader, and she's like, kind of going through recruitment, and their energy is here, and her energy is here. It's not a good combination. And so my reminder to them was that when she's here, they actually need to make sure that they're coming in a little softer, a little cooler, and it allows her to bring her energy down. And they just want what's best for her. And in that, their energy can sometimes set her off. So how do you find that balance? Gratitude and appreciation is important. It's important for us, but it's also really important for our kids. They go through each day, and you're really working hard. It might not always look that way, but they are. And how can we share appreciation? If we see that they're doing something that's a little different this time, how can we note that? How can we make them feel like, oh, you are noticing, right? Because they'll tell you when you're not. And so if you can, it's really important. And again, just that emotional coaching and thinking about how to kind of walk them through particular moments so that they're not kind of just staying here, but able to bring it down with your guidance. And so for them to do that, for our kids to experience that, it's really important that we're also thinking about how we can use some of these tools and competencies to guide our own work, to guide our own kind of day-to-day. Rush shared that if we share examples of when we're trying something out, when we are making a mistake, if we can model some of that, right? Going back to that word, modeling as parents, it actually is another tool for our kids. And so with self-awareness, right, how is it that we can maybe just name the emotion that's coming up for us? Sometimes we don't. They see it, they feel it, but we're not naming it for them. It's important that we're modeling that skill for kids. Being able to think about our self-management. I was on the phone with my daughter the other day and I said, I actually need a moment. I'm gonna go get some fresh air. And she was like, okay, call me when you're done. Right, but again, recognizing that it wasn't just like, oh, I'm sitting there and I'm stewing, but recognizing that I need a moment, and that's okay. She's gonna one day be an adult and need to name when she needs a moment as well. But that self-management is a real skill that we don't always kind of lean into. So how can we do more of that? The social awareness and cultural global competencies. There's so much going on in the world. How do we lean into that? How do we talk about what we're noticing? What's a question for us? I remember someone saying curiosity was a word that stood out when we did the poem earlier. How can we be curious as opposed to just kind of leading with judgment or assumptions? Our kids are seeing enough of that. How can we model a different type of behavior? That lends itself into relationship skills. Do they see you going out? Do they see you kind of building and fostering relationships, talking to new parents, right? Many of you waved your hands saying that you were new to Carrie this year. What does it look like for you to be putting yourselves out there? Do you say to your kid, I was at your school this morning, I met a couple of new parents, right? Like, they need to hear that as well, as relationships are important, and they need to see that that's important for us. And then lastly, compassionate decision-making and action. So many of our schools are talking about equity work, are talking about inclusion, and kind of being in communities where different people, different experiences exist. Our actions connected to that are really important. We can know that there's difference, we can know that there may be different stories that exist in the space. How we respond, how we engage is really something that needs to be modeled as well, right? Are we shutting off when we're learning about something that doesn't maybe feel familiar to us, right? When we are maybe upset with something, how are we emailing that teacher or responding? Is it something that's going to work towards maybe being a solution-oriented, right? We're trying to build understanding. Our kids are always watching, and we have to recognize that, right? When they were younger, they would model some of the things that they saw from us with ease. They automatically saw it. If you were drinking coffee all the time, they're sitting there drinking their, like their tumbler in a similar fashion, right? Because they're watching us and they're trying to mimic us. They mimic some of our bad habits as well. So how can we be mindful of that?
The nuance question, I can do the definition myself, but I wanted to just ask you, last roller, the same slide came last time, it said responsible decision making. This time it says compassion. I can build a connection in my mind, but I would love to hear your perspective. Is there a reason why you changed from responsible to compassion?
Because we're needing empathy more in our world. So compassionate is language that we've been using more recently. Before it used to just be social awareness and kind of stop there. And CASEL has changed their definitions of the competencies, and so have we, in the sense that moving just from kind of being aware is one thing, but recognizing that language, age, gender identity, thinking about religion, like being really intentional about that is also important. So how can we make sure to name that in spaces when we have parents or have teachers or have students? Sometimes they're not always making those dots, connecting those dots. Thank you for the question.
Awesome. Well, we're going to move into our tools. Our first tool is check-in. It's my favorite. And I think it's my favorite because I didn't grow up with it. So if you are hearing me talk about check-in and going, don't worry. It's never too late to start this work. We say that to schools all the time too. A lot of schools start in high school, which is great. But when I say the word check-in, what I mean is checking in with yourself. Students told us pretty quickly, well, it's not just a one-word answer. It's not just that easy. Sometimes my mind feels one way, my soul, heart, spirit, whatever resonates with you, it might be something else, and my body another way. That could be 3 different feelings all at once. Raise your hand if you get that, what I'm saying. Yes. So it's the layers of feelings that we have. But when we pay attention to them, we can make better decisions about what to do. Think about a time in your life when you've been so tired, so angry, so excited, and you've tried to not pay attention to it. Did that work? No. And it comes out in whatever you're trying to do, right? So we want to have a tool for that. You have a tool within yourself, and that's what we teach kids. This is an inner tool they have with them all the time. They can check in with themselves. It's a tool and a ritual for families that you can use. So here you can see the younger kids are just building emotional literacy. And as they get older, they can really become clear instead of fine, right? Which is what their favorite, fine, and depressed. And we're trying to get them to tap into that. What are you really feeling? And that's a tool for them. Another reason that it's so important is that feelings they're normal. A lot of times we grow up thinking that anger is bad emotion. It is not a bad emotion. Anger is a healthy emotion. It's healthy. It gives us information. It's what we do with our anger that can put it into those negative labels. We've already talked about feelings come in layers. Sometimes they come in layers. I like to explain them to little kids. They're like friends that come to visit us. But for teenagers, I like to say they're like your notifications on your phone. They're like, hello, I'm angry, I'm here. What are you going to do about it, right? They're there for us. They're letting us know, hey, You have some things to deal with here. But they don't drive us. They don't control us. They're data. They're data for us. And they're not always rational. For teenagers, oh my goodness, they're not, right? And it's really great for you to validate that with your team. Mama never did that. I mean, she's great, but you know, she could have done it a little more. Like, it's the roller coaster years for a reason. Their moods and hormones are all over the place. I like to use the metaphor of a construction zone. Like in their self and their body, it's like things are changing all the time. And oftentimes we forget how hard that can be, how confusing that can be. This might resonate with you, you know, this idea of feeling two very opposing things at once. It's really possible, right? But kind of hard to understand. Like, how can you really be introverted and reaching out? Loving and questioning. A lot of times, a great way to start a check-in or just a check-in can just be a grounding, quiet moment. So I'd like to invite you into that now, whatever that looks like for you. So if you're like, oh my goodness, you can get up and go to the restroom, you can ignore me, but I would invite you now, we're just going to take about 1 minute just to arrive in this space. To try to pay attention to what's in our mind. Maybe for you that's just putting your feet on the floor, relaxing your shoulders. Maybe it's closing your eyes or lowering your gaze. With so much screens these days, I might even suggest if you don't close your eyes, maybe you just cover your hand like a beautiful eye mask might do for you. And then I'm just going to be quiet and let us think about just drawing our attention and our presence right here to this moment. When you're ready, come on back. It wasn't even a full minute. But sometimes kids like a scheduled time that allows them just to get quiet. So that you might have that ritual in your home. I know a lot of advisories in schools start off with mindful moments. But that might be something that you incorporate in your routine, in your home. We love metaphors in our organization. We like them as a way to access information. Sometimes with teens, words are hard, or they just can't decide on one. So sometimes relating to something else gives us more access to our feelings. So we're going to have you experience that today by using doors. So here you see lots of different doors. The first task for you today for your check-in is just to think about how are you feeling at this moment, mind, body, spirit. Don't even pay attention to the doors right now. Just think about that. You have 2 layers, 1 layer. Just think. How's your morning been? What are you wrestling with? And then, you might still be working on that. That's okay. Then look at the doors and think which one of those doors, maybe 2 of those doors, match your feelings or could represent your feelings today. The type of check-ins we do with students sometimes. Give yourself another minute, and I am going to ask you, if you're willing to, turn and share with a partner. If that just doesn't work for you today, do not worry. You just can stay put. You don't have to share. If you want to just join up with a partner but not really share your check-in, that's okay too.
If you want to stand up, you can sit in for a little bit. If you want to decide to move to the side, the partner will join you.
So at this moment, how about we stand and figure out, maybe give a little eye contact, ask someone or 2, no more than 3. We don't have a lot of time. So wave around, make Of course, if you want to keep standing and move, you can during reflect on an experience. So just to have you think about what that was like for you when you heard me say we're going to check in, we're going to use doors, now we're going to share with someone, maybe how you were feeling in the beginning, middle, or end of that. Maybe you want to think about what it was like to talk to someone about your feeling or your metaphor or your door. And then also maybe some ways that you might do this as a family, or how you're thinking you might use this as a family. Does anybody want to share any of your answers to any of these questions, or just what that was like for you? Yes.
Yeah, what I really like about this is you're not naming, putting a picture, you're not personalizing it. And you're not taking it personally by saying something that I feel X. Instead of saying, I feel connected with the door because that's how I feel. It removes, it keeps a distance between your feelings and who you are. And you're able to objectively look at it. That's really what I felt from this exercise.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
I found it to be very reassuring in our experiences and feelings.
Yeah, validation. Yes.
I was feeling disconnected just to the room and people, and as soon as I engaged, I just settled in. I found that with the family, right? Like everyone's running and busy, but when you sit down and take a moment to just say, how are you? Everyone feels differently, right? And almost immediately connected, so.
For the third question, just to talk about something different.
Yes.
I was here for, I like reading through Ms. Hunter's emails, and I love listening to her. She's wonderful. So I was here for a middle school orientation, and she said, always have 5 questions ready when you're picking them up, and that's something that I literally took in. Like, don't ask them how you feel, because if you just ask them how you feel, they're just going to say, all right, what did you do? Stuff. So have 5 questions for you. They have to like, what was the best part of your day? What was the worst part of your day? So that's something that I've started doing, and I'm thankful for that lecture because I didn't do that before. Actually, my daughter and I used to get into argument because I used to ask her, what did you do? Stuff. And I used to tell her, I sent you to school to do stuff. And then she would just go saying, I'm not in the mood to talk.
Yeah. I remember one time we were talking, we also had a talk, and there was a psychologist sharing, and she was sharing that, a lot of times everything you do won't really work. All kinds of check-ins that we'll suggest might not work, and that it's still okay just to model yourself. So that if you have, the car is really a fun, successful way to talk about things sometimes because there's a backseat typically, not so typically anymore, but you're not looking face to face, so it can be easier. And she said a lot of times couldn't get anything, it was like pulling teeth, so she just started sharing her day. And again, mistakes, ups and downs, so just modeling this normal feeling kind of roller coaster that exists in our lives. Here are some other ways at IFSEL that we love to do check-ins to try to get beyond the fine, as you were saying. Using the scale is really great. I love using a 1 to 10, not good and bad. Remember, all feelings are healthy and normal, but kind of like intensity. Like 1 we usually think of as low, 10 is like high. Everybody know rose and thorn? Okay, so here's some variations for you that are a little kind of out of the box. Sweet and sour, peak and valley. What was your sunny and stormy and your rainbow? Or maybe what was your happy, crappy, or your rant and rave. You could come up with one as a family that you like. I think of like a sports theme if your family is sporty. Or using a metaphor, like if your day was a car, what kind of car, was your day? Or if your day was a cereal, you could get creative. But here's some other ways that you can try. There is,
movie. Or a movie, give
Yes.
your day a movie title, what would it be?
And there's some research to show that, I like the high-low hero one, because you're high and low, you're rose and thorn, because there is research that shows that we think we always remember the negative, but if you're asked to think of the positive, that kind of stays with you. It's a good practice, especially even before nighttime or bed. So that was the tool of check-in. We encourage your homework is to go home and try it on anyone, saying, let's check in and see what you get, and just at least try it for yourself.
You do with a partner, with a friend, before you try with your kid.
It's such a ritual at my house. We don't do it all the time, but now I'll even text my son, sometimes my older son, I'll text 1 to 10, question mark. He just knows, like, okay, 7. But you get a lot of information from numbers. You get a lot more than 5. So the scale could be nice too. And it's nice for your kids to see you and your partner if you have one at home, or maybe you have a family member at home, to also, with adults sharing that as well.
And so we're going to talk a little bit about listening for connection. We named it as another tool. And so Renee Brown says, be as passionate about listening as you are about being heard. Right? It's a message more for us as adults probably than our kids right now. And so we oftentimes will go through these different pointers with students. We've shared them with teachers here at Cary, and they talk about it as they're framing out conversations inside of advisory or in classes. Just kind of think about what it means to be an active listener and not just listening to respond. And so being able to kind of have these prompts at times allows for dialogue to continue as opposed to a lot of dialogue being shut down. And so we have an activity that we want you all to participate in again. We're going to ask you to find a partner, and you really just have a minute. You want to make sure we get you out of here on time. And so you'll have a minute to share what was a sparkling moment for you. It could be a moment of joy, of pride, of happiness, or success. It could be related to your kids or related to something else in your world. But we want to give you the practice of being able to have these kind of short, brief conversations that don't require a lot of preparation, but just kind of being present in the moment. So you will do that, and then your partner, so we're going to ask you to do maybe just 2 people for this activity. Your partner will share their story, your partner will tell you, details of your story, and then you'll switch. So it's going to take us about 4 minutes total.
Maybe
Can
we
we
ask,
handle
you
that?
want to ask this, why don't we just use the partner they just had for the
Let's do that.
check-in?
But some people have 3.
Okay. See if you can divide up your trio. We'll see. They can come around and help you.
So if you can find your partner that you had before, you'll share a joyful moment, a moment of pride or success. Bring the time, again, part of our practice, it's not listed as one of the top 5 kind of things, but reflection is an active part of our process. And so we just are curious, how did it feel telling a positive story? And what did it feel like to have your story shared back with you? So you can just start there. Anybody want to share out?
It was kind of nice to reflect and go back on all the high points of sort of paper and basing your memory. This isn't happening weekend. So you tell me, just go through the lines and remind you of all the high points.
Thank you for sharing. Right, being able to just be in our story and kind of recognize, like, oh yeah, I did do that, right? Or that was a moment of joy, or that was a success. Sometimes we can focus on all the busyness of our worlds, but how do we lean into those moments where we actually are doing great things, or experiencing connection or joy? Thank you.
So, one thing that stood out to me was Catherine's story was very much like a great, was a basketball game. They come from behind, they ended up winning. It was like a great occasion, like a special occasion. And mine was just, they were on
Absolutely.
So just, yeah, the tiniest things we can spark joy, as well as the momentous occasions.
Right, and getting to that basketball game is an important piece, but getting out the door, right, can be important as well.
I think for us, it was more a matter of trusting the process, believing your kids. But get there.
Absolutely. Right, how do we keep hope, how do we keep faith, and recognize, like, keep going, right? Sometimes it feels hard, sometimes it feels like, oh, are you gonna get out of the house today? Right, and how do we continue to just believe that it's gonna be okay? And our kids, again, need to see that we can kind of find those small moments and talk about them, be able to share them. That modeling is going to be really important for our kids, even with those little things. Thank you. And so I'm going to.
So I would say something about the reflection. A lot of times, and like you were talking, in the moment when me and my kids are discussing something and then I get a disagreement where they want to do something else, I'm suggesting something else. But as soon as like I drop them off or like I'm away from them and I start thinking about what they said, it starts to make sense and I feel like, yeah, probably I should give in. And what they were saying, might be the right thing to do versus me hoping that what I'm suggesting is the right thing for them. So that moment of reflection really helps resolve conflict.
Thank you for surfacing that. Right, again, the days go quickly. There's a lot that we're taking care of and being responsible for. And so building in that time of just, well, what did I hear? Maybe that's why they said that, right? Being able to slow down a little bit is so very important. And our kids need us to do more of that. So thank you for sharing that, because it's hard. And you said give in. You didn't give in. Right, but you heard them. You heard them. And you were able to think through kind of what their rationale was. And it made sense. Sometimes our kids don't make sense. In that moment, they made sense. So thank you for sharing that. And this is just an image, right? I think just highlighting that point of sometimes we're hearing and it's just going to the side. It's actually not being absorbed. What does it look like for us to be more of a sponge as opposed to a brick? And so we have to be doing that so that our kids are doing less of it. Listening with both ears, right? So what happened? How did you feel? Right? Or in that instance, what are you thinking? Why might that be? Right? What's your goal? What's the point, end goal? Being able to think through what is kind of, when speaking, how that also is partnered with the listening. And again, being more intentional about that. It's not that we're bad parents. We're just busy parents. And our kids might feel quiet at moments, but how can we lean into not being so busy and actually really listening?
Yeah, I like to use, a lot of these skills are marriage therapy tools and skills too because they work. They're like negotiation skills as well. So even just having some prompts that you like in your pocket that you can say, like one of the ones that I find that works, it's kind of annoying that it works, it's just like, I see, or It's like you're holding your tongue and you're just hearing them. And I do think sometimes it helps to even acknowledge what they're saying, saying, well, let me think about it. I hear what you're saying, let me think about it. And sometimes they are so excited just to get that, instead of, no, that's ridiculous, or absolutely not. Or ask your, the other spouse. So, coming up with those that sound authentic for you, because they're hard. It's really hard to just go,
It's an interesting point. I have to give that some thought.
yeah.
Smart one.
Yeah.
Again, just thinking about undivided attention and being able to really just be present. There's value to that. And we mentioned that we'll be talking about emotional coaching, that these tools are part of the emotional coaching. So I just want to make sure to highlight that for you as well.
All right, are we ready for tool 3? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, tool 3 is cooling off, so we need your attention. So this was actually a funny question someone put in. Well, how do you avoid the big emotions, or like how do you get to the point where you don't have to cool off? If I had the answer to that, we would all be in a good space. But I think self-awareness is a big start to that. Being aware of our emotions will help us not to escalate them and help us be able to try to deal with them before they get so, like, we're like, like this. So this topic of today is like, what do we do when big moments arise, right? And we never really know when big moments are gonna arise because life is unpredictable. So thinking about your different ways that you handle it when you're like losing it. So we talk about this with students too. What are your ways to cool off, and what are things that we can practice? Because whatever we're doing, we're practicing. We're always practicing. We're either practicing something we used to do or something new, right? And that's building that habit or that muscle. So what are your ways? What are some ways that you cool off? You de-escalate. Just shout them out.
I go outside for a walk.
Yep. Breathing.
Take a shower.
Ice cream.
Scream or ice cream? I honestly didn't hear.
I said scream.
Yes. Yes. I remember one time.
Often together.
Yeah.
Ice cream, I, you, we all
Scream. Let me get ice cream. I remember one 8th grade teacher took the kids out to the field one day. She's like, we're gonna have a group scream. And the kids thought it was the best thing.
Lately it's been Netflix. Just go and
Netflix.
take your mind off things and come back to it later.
Something that doesn't feel so charged.
I'm working on it, but I think, being able to walk away from the situation is very important. I can't say that every time I can make it happen, but I'm working on it. My husband is working on it. Sometimes these things are just so heated and it's really hard to effectively walk away from it. Another way I'm doing right now is to, I always have candies and sweets with me. It helps me to, it's also a chemical thing. You just eat candy and it makes you happy. I love this haiku, so I always have haiku with me.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, chocolate also do the trick.
Yeah.
In our house, my husband and I know when the other one needs to walk away, so we kind of hold each other accountable and tell them, go take a walk and I got this.
Yeah.
We sort of
Yeah, that's great.
It helps her to rewire. We had an argument, we take a moment, me and my husband both do that. We go back and we say sorry for sorry people. It continuously proves it up. She might be up there, if you go and say, sorry how I handled it. And it might not be, she might not go back and say, oh, that's fine, but we can see that she's fine.
Yeah, and our whole second segment in October is on conflict and restorative practices. Well, you might not be surprised that our children say some of the same things that we do. So you can see there's lots, and some of the ones you chose are in here. So, it's something to think about when our kids are really angry and we want to talk through it or talk about it and they want to leave. You might reframe that, like they might need to do or want to do one of these things. So here's some other practices just to build your toolbox. So it's good to have a big toolbox. And what we try to do and what schools are trying to do is to introduce kids to different ones. They might not like most of them, but they might find just one that works. And all you need is just one that works, especially anytime, anywhere. So you might be thinking, another add to your homework here. What's a cool-off method that you can do anytime, anywhere? Because like right now, if I was really escalating, I need to do it right now, and I'm presenting. So usually it comes back to breath, which is why you'll see it again and again. There's some books here and ways to do it. You just mentioned this. I love the triangle of thoughts, feelings, and actions. It's a simple one. It might work for you, it might not. But thinking about what are the feelings that I have that might escalate a situation, and then of course what might de-escalate it. Same thing with thoughts. What might I be thinking that would escalate? Oh, he always says this. He has no respect for me. You know, and also maybe what thoughts would de-escalate it. I'm not sure if he really meant that. I should maybe recheck in with him. I'm being sensitive. Some thoughts. What actions might I do that would escalate a situation? And what actions might I do to de-escalate? We do this with students. It's really helpful for them to be able to think through, because when you have that pause, to be able to then go back and choose an action or redo an action, it's really helpful. So you'll see this again in conflict. And then you've already said this yourself, but just want to really validate it, is parenting is a journey, right? Take the long view. Whenever you can kind of think, is this really such a big thing that we're going to blow our minds over it, or can we step back from this moment and let it go? Modeling, we keep talking about it. Owning it and offering a redo. I've used this one so many times. Go back in there and say, you know what? Can I have a redo? I love asking my kids for a redo. It's like, maybe another way of saying I'm sorry. Like, I don't like the way I handled it. Let's try again. And you can say that to them. Hey, you want to come back and just try again? And then I like to offer in humor, like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You know, because they think you're going to match, as Sunita said, their anger, their frustration. But if you can give some space and grace and be like, okay, I think maybe let's take our space, anything that you can say to kind of defuse it. And that's really hard when you're also up there. This is what emotion coaching that we've been talking about, Sunita and I. We've been doing it this whole session, but some really good steps to kind of wrap it up. Well, listening is just the skill you really have to implement. Active listening. What the active listening does is it reflects back. So it's really a great skill. The one that I really like to do is, did I get that right? Because kids really like to say, nope, you didn't. So they might say this, and then you say, okay, so you're frustrated because I keep telling you to put your phone away, and I don't know what you're looking at. And then they say, nope. You keep telling me, right? And so you're showing them you're listening, but you're also repeating that. And then they help you really get to really the root of the problem through that. So they might look like prompts, but they're really great. I like to post them around my house. And then this one is so helpful, just giving choices. How can I be helpful to you right now? Do you want a hug? Do you want wisdom? Do you just want me to sit here and listen?
You want me to go back, grab you a glass of water?
You want me to leave and come back? Do you want to just vent? And I'll go, yes, 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 yes. And they have some power in that, and some choice, which they feel like they don't have a lot of choices as a teenager. And then, it never hurts to say, I'm here to support you. Here's just another way to look at it, asking yourself, am I being calm? Am I reacting? Am I being dramatic? That's always a good one. What is it triggering you? Helping your kids name the emotion. That's why that check-in is helpful. Communicating how feelings are important, the listening, and then just being curious. I wonder what that argument was about. I wonder what your friend was feeling.
Sure.
Wondering is really helpful. I think when our parenting, Mama Bear jumps in, sometimes we are quick to judge and blame the other person as well because we care so much for our kids. And if we could try to bring in that wonder, it helps them learn that and model that with differences and in conflict.
And then lastly, just thinking through gratitude and appreciation. We've asked you to turn to your partner and say thank you, or just kind of, give an appreciation. And again, for our kids, it's important, but even for ourselves, it's important. we named that as a part of self-care and just kind of being aware of what we're grateful for, what's helping us, right? So our bodies, hearts, and minds, thinking about how we're showing up in spaces is really helpful. It actually allows for a healthy, that's my alarm saying we could wrap up. Just it's healthy for us. And that's really the goal. It's part of the reason why the team here at Carey has brought you all together and created this space. Because the dialogue can't just happen in classrooms, it has to happen at home as well. Right? If teachers are working on this, it's because they're navigating a lot, but parents are navigating a lot as well. And so how can we all kind of work on that together for ourselves, but also for our kids? Just being able to think through, here are some different ways of just extending gratitude, appreciation, and making sure that our kids are aware of that. We give the sentence starters because sometimes we're like, how do I say it so I don't sound like I'm like, trying to be condescending or right, kind of like, I'm making a joke out of this. Like I really want it to feel sincere. And so we have found that just some of these comments can help kids to have those moments, to feel like, oh, you hear me, you saw me, you understood. And that there is appreciation. It feels deeper than just kind of what we're saying, right? So I'm encouraged now that you told me that. I have more information, and I have a lot to think about. I appreciate that. Because I'll be like, oh, right? Like you just admitted you're going to think about this. Yes, right? It's a win for them. But again, it's helpful. There are helpful tools for us to have.
I like this one because it brings in the apology. You can just offer, when you're offering the ritual of like an appreciation, you can also offer a time to go back to that moment where you messed up. So you can offer appreciation or apology.
And I think sometimes we think that that moment has passed. You can't come back to it. You can go to your kid, even if it's 2 days later, and say, I've really given that some thought. I just want you to know, like, I appreciated that you were honest with me. It goes a long way, and it also allows them to see that things might be kind of heated in a moment, but that there's some coming back to it. And that can be important for them to see and have models for them as well.
Okay, I love this one. This is from a book, but I love her idea about once a day, this is your goal, you can add this to one part of your homework, to treat your child like you do your, like a little puppy dog. Just like lovingly embrace them no matter what. Just try it once a day.
Do we tell them we're doing that?
Try it, and then you can say, no wait, I'm trying this.
I wonder what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. Right. See what you get. Yeah.
The next session?
Next time we'll be together as online, and I don't know, Twana, do they have to register for the Zoom or we send it out?
For this one right here?
The next one.
Oh, the next one, so yeah, we'll have a registration for sign up to come in. It'll be from 6 to 7:30. It's October 24th, and this is the next one, so you'll get one from, we'll have it in Josette, we'll have it in her weekly, and so Donna have her weekly, and then we'll have it from Mandy in the communication weekly. So we'll send it out 1,000 different ways so you all can sign up for it as well. So that'll come through there. And then on April 30th, from 11:45 to 1:15, we'll have another one in person. So we'll have something the second half of the school year, especially around the end when all these beautiful ERBs and APs and testing and all of these, so we can, bring that for our babies, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't interrupt. How do you feel about students listening in on the Zoom? Only because for them to take in some of these skills to hear from the voices now, instead of from their parents, even if they're not interacting.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's all different ways. I always say it's not a secret what we do. And so what we're saying here is what we do with the children, our kids as well. But I think it's great to hear what they see, what we're saying to the parents. So absolutely, let them see it if you like. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's cool for them to see what you're learning and what you're interested in, and they'll probably think, oh yeah, we learned this. It's cool.
So in the next few days, probably next week, we'll send out the link. It'll be in Ms. Hunter's email for middle school, and it'll be in Ms. Dr. Easton's for the upper school, and I'll also have it in the weekly with Mandy Daly. So it'll come out different ways to Zoom, so for that.
So have our kids gotten all grade levels?
Oh, yes.
Have gotten like some forms of this?
Yes.
That would be really helpful if, as they're getting it, if we could just get an email, say, hey, this is what you're, and then we can kind of mirror and practice and talk about it at home.
That's a wonderful idea.
That would be,
Yeah.
that would be
Yeah.
super helpful.
So some in the weekly that you get from Ms. Huntress, she incorporates what we're saying in the advisory. But upper school we haven't, because upper school, this is our second year, and upper school we're doing our advisory program, so that's coming out soon. I love, yes. Yeah, so we're doing this strong
Just so we can be
event.
like, hey, I heard you talk about that. Wow.
I love that, yes.
I just want to give a quick plug for another parenting thing.
Yes.
So I'm Katie Leventhal, the middle school counselor. One of the wonderful things that IFSEL taught us is something called open session. All your kids are doing it. It's a form of dialogue where it's generating really authentic discussion. That came from them. And so Nikki Allen and I are putting on an open session for adults around parenting in the digital age and how we can partner together. That's happening October 29th. So you'll see more information, but you'll learn this dialogue that the kids have been learning. It's awesome. And then we're also talking about the ongoing issue of how we do this parenting digital stuff. So that's October 29th.
So we're gonna inundate you all so much. Hopefully, pick up with the things. So I want to give our appreciation and gratitude to you all as parents. So we appreciate you all coming, and then also our wonderful facilitators, Rush and our program. They're here, please ask. We are just thankful and grateful. So thank you all again. Have a good day.